If only someone who really believed in limited government, someone who respects the dignity of the individual freedom. If only someone like Ron Paul would run for president. Oh, he's here via satellite. Dr. Paul, why didn't you run for president?
Well, John, that's interesting because I had a dream once that I actually did. And I had a dream that I was doing very well and that I won the primary in Iowa. And boy, I woke up that next morning. I went out and watched the TV. My name was never mentioned. So I guess it was all just a dream. But I've thought about it. So maybe someday I will.
And hence the point of my joking introduction. You were often ignored by not this program, but many in the media. But you did get in the Republican primary more than 2 million votes.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased. Of course, you always want to do better. But I was very encouraged by the number of people, especially the young people that showed up when I went to the university. That's where I have become more optimistic. I have to admit, I did watch some of the State of the Union message tonight, and I didn't come out of watching that very optimistic. That was rather depressing. But going to the college campuses, which I will continue to do, there's reason to be optimistic. A lot of young people know what you have been talking about and so many others. It's so different than it was when I first got into politics in 1970. A lot of people now do care about individual liberty and limited government.
And you didn't attend many states of the union, you and a few other congressmen. It was, I don't blame you. Some of these guys show up 10 hours early to be at the end of the aisle so they can get their faces on TV. It's a big suck-up fest.
Boy, it was terrible. I watched a little bit of that tonight, and I keep thinking of, it's like a circus, a joyous occasion, and rushing in there and getting those seats. And they'll go in there and occupy a seat there very early on, hours and hours before. But the jumping up and down and the ritual that they go through, should the Republicans get up on this one or should they sit on their hands? Well, this is one where everybody gets up and down. And it sounds like the world has been saved. If you were locked in and just being on that floor, it would be so distorted. But that's about the way Washington is. It's so distorted. They live in their own little bubble, and they don't know that there's anybody like you or anybody in your audience that might have questions about what's going on in this country. And certainly we didn't get any answers tonight.
And I note that there's no requirement that they hold these big celebrations, that the Constitution just says the president from time to time shall give Congress information on the State of the Union. Thomas Jefferson wrote his, and that's what happened for 100 years. George Washington said 800 words. Obama, it's several thousand words. That depresses me. I'm going to drop that. Are there younger members of Congress now? You have retired. Are there younger people who give you hope?
Oh, yeah, certainly. The numbers aren't great, but, there's 6 to 12 that are going to do a very good job, and that's a lot more than there had been during the many years that I was there. So that's very encouraging. But
you've endorsed a few. Representative Justin Amash, Senator Ted Cruz,
sure.
Thomas Massey,
and
Ted Yoho,
right,
Kerry Bentaviolo, Steve Stockman.
Yeah, and that's a real good start. And we do need a lot more, but the truth is, I don't think we can, after listening to a speech like that, we should be convinced that this spending isn't going to quit before we have a calamity. That's what I think is going to happen. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying to change people's minds. But to think that next year or in 2 years from now, we're going to have more members of Congress and we're finally going to come to our senses and we're going to vote against some of this largesse for all the special interests and we're going to bring our troops home and they're going to repeal and restrain the president from assassinating American citizens, his so-called right to do that. That's not going to happen. There's going to be a serious problem, economic, and a crisis here where there will be a decision made by the people, mostly the young people right now that are in college and getting out of college, on what kind of a system we have. We have an outline. It's been around. It's called the Constitution. And if we would go in that direction once again, we could solve some of our problems. But right now, it's not going to be gradual. I think it's inevitable we're going to have this financial crisis, which is going to be very, very serious.
The answer is in the Constitution. I happen to have one here. I'm always struck by how thin it is compared to the laws that we now must obey.
Right.
You were in Congress 35 years. Anything get better?
No, it all got worse. You know, the spending always went up, and government got bigger, and more wars, and more printing of money, and more power to the Fed, more central economic planning. But that's what you see on the surface. In the 1930s, most of the things you saw on the surface was defense of liberty, and even Roosevelt ran on a balanced budget and the gold standard in 1932. So I think the reverse is the case now. Everything on the surface looks like it's welfareism and warfareism forever. But I think underneath there's this smoldering desire that is growing by leaps and bounds that's saying that a lot of these people in this country have had enough of it. And I think tonight, you know, he talked about a lot about gun controls. I don't think the American people are going to put up with that. And I think this awakening is coming, is on its way. So I would like to do my share in trying to nourish that awakening.
He did talk a lot about gun control, but he never mentioned the word drone once.
Yeah, that's the gun we ought to really control. I think the drone missile is, and our drone warfare is one of the most dangerous things. You know, I listened when I left Congress, I listed in my speech that attack on civil liberties was our most serious threat. But then the other thing was the killing of foreigners in foreign countries, like that we do in endless countries, you know, by drones. And civilians get killed, and Americans get killed, and it's so over the top. And there's not enough talk about that. And that to
but
me,
if you don't have your civil liberty, they do say they are keeping us safe. Kill them there so they don't kill us here.
Yeah, that's what they say, but every time they kill a civilian over there, you probably get 10 more that are dedicated to the principles of what the Al-Qaeda stands for. Keep foreigners out of our land and punish those who come here to kill us. And the war fever that is built up, the need. Right now I saw a statistic where we are actually putting troops into probably about 35 countries in Africa because we're competing with China. Now, China has earned some money. You know, we buy their stuff, and they're going over there and investing in natural resources. So we're investing by buying more weapons and going over there and putting more troops in Africa. And now they say, well, we've had this victory in Iraq and Afghanistan, so we're going to move to the Far East and into Africa and conquer those lands as well. And it is going to backfire because we will go bankrupt. And these things will have to stop, and there's going to be a lot of piling on. This is not the way to win friends and influence people by dropping drone missiles on them constantly.